And then there's rent. Because Australia has imported too many people for too long but not built enough houses, the queues for rental properties go around the block. People pay things like $400 for a spare room in someone's house. There's more than 120 people who turn up when there's one rental property available in the beautiful country setting of Ipswich in Queensland. And rent has gone up by more than 7.6%. Now, this happens because of the lack of supply and the demand. This government has made it worse. As you know, they plan to introduce 900,000 people to those very same rental queues. First and most obvious question is, where will they live? But then obviously it's more competition for the little places that are available right now. And even the ABC talk about the uncomfortable truth that when you have more demand for the limited supply of housing, particularly rental accommodation, then the amount that the landlord can charge goes up and up and up. Another example of Albo-nomics, where it's all great for the federal budget, that more people pay more tax and they get a surplus that they get to say at the next election is the reason you should re-elect them. But the reality is that they have made decision after decision after decision, and a greater increase in immigration adds to these problems. And then if you're somebody who's paying off a house. Now, 2/3 of the Australian property market is in a scenario where somebody is a renter or somebody is paying off a mortgage. Now, it's more likely than not that somebody who is in a rental property that somebody is trying to pay off with a mortgage, let alone the third of people who live in the house that they are currently trying to pay off. And there have been 12, count them, 12 interest rate rises since Labor came to power. Remember when it was just one before the last election, the sky was falling and it was the reason to change the government? Well, what do you say after 12? And the reality is that the amount of money that you have to find to pay off a mortgage under this government is massive, on top of what already is the biggest bill that you have to pay each and every month. Now, the average Australian is somewhere between a $500,000 and a $750,000 loan. Under this government, you have to find an extra $1,100 a month for $500,000, almost $2,000 for $750,000, and if you're paying off more than $1 million, then you're paying at least another $2,500 every month. Now, if those numbers seem small and manageable, think about it this way. If you are on a $500,000 loan, since this government came to power, you have to find an extra $13,440 a year to pay off the loan, to not default, to not get booted out of your house. If you're on $750,000 loan, it's an extra $21,000, and it's more than $30,000 the higher you go above $1 million that people are trying to pay back, which of course is a very significant number of people in the suburban areas of Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. Now, all of that has got worse under this government. Yet all they have ever turned around and done is not cut their own spending, not do their own bit to deal with inflation. Instead, the Reserve Bank is the one that has to ratchet it up and up and up and up. Now, thankfully, retail trade figures showed that the retail sector was going back a little bit in the last month, so the automatic case for a rate rise in December may well go into a holding pattern. But the likelihood of it coming in January or February next year, well, certainly February, sorry, they don't meet in January, February or March of next year, well, it starts to become more likely. And that ratcheting up, there's only so much that people can take. There's only so much that people can take without having to sell their house. And then they go into a market where there's more people competing for fewer rental places. So Australians right now are caught between the rock and the hard place. This is 18 months into, halfway through the term of the guy who promised, as clearly as Tony Abbott did to stop the boats, that cost of living would be lower under his administration. A Labor government will lower the cost of living. No ifs, no buts, no asterisks, no maybes, no carry the ones.